Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to be pulling back the curtain on the wealth ladder. It's kind of like a giant puzzle, right? We'll be climbing it step by step, starting from the very bottom rungs of pure basic survival all the way up to the middle class. And spoiler alert, we're going to uncover why what feels like financial comfort is actually often a pretty precarious trap. To kick things off, we really have to look at the absolute foundation of human survival. And it's a stark reality. The difference between surviving and, well, not surviving on this planet often comes down to this incredibly small daily amount $2.15. Just sit with that number for a second. It's a profoundly thin line separating life from absolute desperation. Now, flip the coin. Because at the exact same time that some folks are just trying to survive on $2 a day, we have individuals playing by the exact same economic rules who are sitting on unfathomable, massive fortunes. We're talking exceeding $200 billion. It's a completely different reality, right? Yet, wild as it is, it exists on the exact same ladder we're exploring today. So let's get into Section 1, the extreme wealth divide. We're mapping the bottom half. Which brings us right to Section 2, the reality of poverty, looking at the absolute bottom rungs. To really grasp this bottom half, we gotta start at survival in its absolute rawest form. Now, in places like the US, we don't often see this firsthand, but extreme poverty means living on less than that $2.15 a day we just mentioned. And here's the kicker, the really vital context you need. That isn't what's left over in your budget after rents or your streaming subscriptions. No, that is your total allowance for food, water, shelter, and medicine combined. At this extreme level, the very idea of a refrigerator or, say, visiting a doctor, it's basically mythological. And you can't just work your way out of this rung either. I mean, if you're heavily malnourished or sick, you are physically unable to work. It's literally like being trapped at the bottom of a deep well with absolutely zero way out. Okay, moving just one rung up the ladder, we hit what we call regular poverty. Here, you are officially above that $2 extreme survival line, but man, your daily life is defined by impossible choices. You're not sitting around agonizing over upgrading to ad-free streaming. Instead, you're facing this terrifying daily triage. Do I pay for dinner tonight, or do I keep the electricity on? It is just a constant, exhausting state of survival triage. And then we step into relative poverty. Now, this one's a bit trickier to identify, but it is deeply impactful. At this rung, theoretically, you have enough to cover the bare basics, but you are surviving rather than actually living. Why? Because you're pretty much completely unable to participate in normal social life. Just imagine this. All your friends are sharing memes, they're group chatting on modern smartphones, and you're still carrying around an old basic Nokia brick phone. You have the absolute basics to exist, sure, but you are totally cut off socially from the world buzzing around you. Let's move on up to Section 3, the financial min-maxers. This is the lower middle class. So this rung right here is actually where the majority of America begins. You finally have a bit of stability. You might be working in a trade, teaching, or doing some administrative work. And arguably the most important shift here, when your phone buzzes with a notification, your heart doesn't drop with the terrifying fear that it's a debt collector. Huge relief, right? But the defining hallmark of this level is what I call financial min-maxing. It's all about intense, rigid optimization. You drive a super reliable Toyota, not because you wouldn't love a fancy Lexus, but because you've ruthlessly optimized your budget. You rely on hand-me-down electronics, and you only save for emergencies when the math strictly allows it. You are comfortably above the poverty line, you're surviving well, but let's be real, there is zero room in the math for splurging. You are squeezing absolutely every single drop of value out of every single dollar. All right, stepping up again, we reach Section 4, the middle class trap, or as I like to call it, entering the Goldilocks zone. This next major tier is the one typically dealt with our nurses, our mid-level office workers, our teachers. It's the Goldilocks zone of finance. It's not too much, it's not too little. It is just enough to afford your needs, plus a few of your wants, and generally feel, well, okay about life. The crucial turning point here is that at this rung, you can finally take actual vacations. You can walk into a store, upgrade your phone every couple of years, and you don't spiral into a week of guilt about it. You've finally reached a place where you can sleep soundly at night without that suffocating anxiety over tomorrow's basic utility bills. But And this is a massive but. Here is the harsh reality. The Goldilocks zone, it's actually a trap. Yeah, you've got comforts. You have the shiny, upgraded phones, the annual vacations, and your core needs are absolutely met. But look at the threats lurking just off screen. Because you feel comfortable, it kind of masks the terrifying fact that you lack any real margin of error. Just one bad event, say a sudden job loss, a scary medical emergency, or even just a major unexpected car repair, that doesn't just sting your wallet, it can completely, utterly decimate years of your hard-earned financial progress. You have comforts, sure, but you do not have the heavy-duty safety net required to take big life risks, like, starting your own business or retiring early. Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, the $1,000 test. We're measuring true financial vulnerability here. The data tells a shockingly clear story on this. A massive 2/3, that's 66% of Americans, are living paycheck to paycheck. So what does that actually mean? It means the vast majority of people around you are constantly stressed just beneath the surface, completely lacking any real financial safety net. All that money that comes in, it goes right back out the door just to maintain that Goldilocks lifestyle, leaving basically nothing behind to absorb the inevitable shocks of life. And hey, if you're sitting there thinking earning a high salary magically fixes all of this, let's look at the numbers. Shockingly, a huge chunk, 44%, of people earning over $100,000 a year are stuck in that exact same precarious financial boat. No way, right? They are making six figures, yet they are still living paycheck to paycheck, riding the exact same razor's edge as folks on the lower rungs. So how in the world does someone making six figures end up living paycheck to paycheck? Well, it all comes down to lifestyle inflation. This sneaky phenomenon happens because as you earn more money, your lifestyle naturally inflates right alongside it to consume that new income. Suddenly, things that used to be luxury wants, like, a nicer car, dining out all the time, upgrading to a bigger house, they quietly morph into needs in your brain. And because your spending rises at the exact same pace as your income, that gap, your actual financial freedom gap, never actually closes. You just end up with a much more expensive version of the exact same financial stress. So, the ultimate test of what rung you're actually standing on isn't your salary at all, it's a surprise expense. Currently, 59% of Americans cannot cover a surprise $1,000 expense directly from their savings. Just think about that for a second. If your water heater violently dies tomorrow morning and your very first thought is, okay, which credit card isn't maxed out yet? The harsh truth is that you haven't truly left the lower rungs of the ladder. You are just wearing a very convincing middle-class mask. To actually break out of this trap and prepare for the affluent rungs, which we'll be covering in part 2, by the way, you need a highly actionable exit strategy. First, you have to stop playing bell roulette every month. Just stop it. Second, you must aggressively lower your debt-to-income ratio to under 36%. And finally, you've got to start investing in low-cost index funds, things like VTI. Essentially, you have to shift from working for your money to letting your money do the heavy lifting for you. That is literally the only way to build a real life-proof buffer. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder until our next explainer. Look at the rungs we've covered today. Where do you honestly land? Are you intensely min-maxing every single dollar down in the lower middle class, or are you sitting comfortably but dangerously in the precarious Goldilocks trap? It's an absolutely vital question you need to answer if you ever want to climb higher. In our next explainer, we're going to explore the multimillionaires and the billionaires, and we'll see how the rules of the game change entirely once you hit 8 figures. Thanks for tuning in and have a prosperous day.